Good afternoon to everyone. And again, thank you so much for joining Cisco's and ABCK-AmCham Kuwait's webinar on how to protect the remote workforce. First, I would like to encourage you to follow us on social media at ABCK1985 for upcoming events. And if you're interested in becoming a member, you can contact us at membership@abckw.org or go to our website at www.abckw.org to learn more about becoming a member and qualifying as such. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker today, Mr. Ayed Qartah. So Mr. Ayed currently works as a security technical solutions architect within the global security sales organization at Cisco. Ayed works with many customers in all verticals where he provides architectural design and implementation recommendations to solve a multitude of cybersecurity challenges. Ayed has over 12 years of experience working with large enterprise networks, banks, governments, defense, and energy customers in the Middle East. Ayed is currently pursuing his master's degree in cybersecurity, specifically cyber intelligence specialization, at Utica College, New York. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so in the meantime, we ask that you keep your microphones muted, and during the Q&A, you may unmute your microphones to ask questions or ask them on the chat box. Mr. Ayed, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paula. Really appreciate the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's my pleasure to be your presenter. Our subject today will be about how to secure the remote workforce during the COVID-19 pandemic. So next slide, please. Perfect, awesome. All right. So when it comes to securing the remote worker, customers globally, they started to ask many questions because they were not prepared to respond to this global pandemic. They were trying their best to resume their business. They're trying to support their customers, clients, their employees, but asking their employees to start working from home was a big challenge because they were not ready for this. Allowing thousands of employees to connect remotely on a short notice was challenging to many IT teams, directors, and managers. So to distribute the workforce in a short time is challenging to many customers globally. And based on statistics and surveys from third-party consulting companies, we have some interesting numbers. So in the US alone, around 56% of the employees have a job where they have to work remotely. And many organizations, they have percentage of employees where they don't need to go to office, to drive and commute to offices. So they are basically already doing their job from home, but many employees, they have to job and to go to office. So this percentage of customers are still, let's say, having this challenge of moving the remaining of employees to go and work from home. And they had to go through their IT departments, asking them how we can solve this. Also, we have organizations where they have Salesforce where they are going to office or they work from outside. They also have some sort of remote work facilities or tools and processes. So they are somehow ready to allow those employees to continue their work. Maybe they need to prepare the environment to handle the rest of employees. Now, many organizations in the Middle East, based on our interaction with customers, they are asking us, okay, we want to allow our environment to be ready for more employees to join the remote workforce. So working from home will become the new norm. And those employees, they might not have the tools or the know-how how to access their resources remotely, or maybe to leverage the available tools to connect with their colleagues or their customers. So with time, customers are getting the expertise and the know-how to allow them to connect remotely and resume their work. Next slide, please. So there are benefits for employers and employees when it comes to work. Working from home will definitely lower the overhead cost. So organizations can save a lot of money when they hire employees and they are working from home. So this is definitely will benefit them on the financial side. Also, the employee cost. So there's no need for commute or traveling. There are benefits for both employees and employers when it comes to working from home, starting with lowering the overhead cost. So employers can save money per employee when they are working from home, and also saving money for the employee cost. They don't need to commute, so saving on gas and food, parking. So that's a lot of savings, especially for large organizations where they have many employees on their payroll. Also, businesses, they can and the agent was working from home. There was no disruption, no delay. So the benefit of working from home is high, and you're definitely allowing your business to continue serving your clients. And productivity. More and more we keep hearing from experts and human resources experts about employees' productivity. It's getting higher when they work from their home, from the comfort of their homes, and they are surrounded by their families. So that's good for both sides. Next slide, please. Now, definitely, there are challenges for businesses when it comes to allowing their employees to work from home. We have to keep in mind that allowing our employees to connect from their homes, questions that being raised by different business owners about how can we verify the identity of the employee. We want to allow our employees to connect remotely, but without verifying their identity, it will be having some risk on the business. How can we defend and prevent threat actors from targeting our employees? Because the perimeter is expanding. The employee's home and room is becoming part of the perimeter. So we have to defend that as well. We have to think about the additional risks and threat scenarios that can happen when our employees are joining remotely and connecting to the corporate network. We have to also think about how we can allow this employee to maintain the same connectivity and give him the freedom and flexibility to access the internal tools remotely. We have to make sure they are having a secure remote access capability, and at the same time, we don't want to disturb their experience. How we can enable secure access to their business applications, whether on-prem or in the cloud. Today, hackers and cyber criminals, they are capitalizing on this pandemic and on the working from home. So they are going after employees, since these employees, they might not be able to secure their corporate devices or even personal devices or tablets. Many organizations are allowing their employees to leverage their personal devices, especially that there's a huge shortage in laptops and desktops in the market. So how do you trust those personal devices, personally owned devices, to connect to your environment? Next slide, please. So thinking about remote workers. Now, remote workers, they are part of the organization and they are part of the workforce. They need to maintain their access to the organization to do their job, to do their business. but sometimes they are creating more risk than they thought. So things like how we can restrict the corporate data from leaving those devices and being stolen by hackers or cyber criminals. How we can make sure that accessing SaaS application is protected and preventing access to shadow IT applications. Hackers are compromising our privileges and accessing the corporate resources. What if the employee is bypassing the VPN? Because when you need to do some work, you have to be on the corporate VPN, the virtual private network, to access the corporate security. But when you finish your job, most of the time, employees, they tend to disconnect the VPN so they can browse the internet directly to watch Netflix or to have access to their personal websites. How can we secure that access? How can we improve the awareness? How we can increase the awareness? Because this behavior will expose the company to additional risks. So we need to make sure our employees are well educated and they are aware of the threats that they may face on the internet. And working on the personal Wi-Fi without encryption, without security, might also introduce risks that we don't need to face, because malwares and phishing and weaponized documents and websites can always target the corporate resources if they are not protected using the proper controls. Next slide, please. So, talking about risks and the threat landscape, cyber criminals, they always capitalize on global events, on geopolitics events, on any event that can generate more bandwidth to them, more victims, and allow more, let's say, infections. So with the beginning of the COVID pandemic, cyber criminals, they leverage the same tactics that we know of, but they leverage new themed campaign, new COVID-19 themed campaigns to attack victims worldwide. And the Talos Cyber Threat Intelligence Organization within Cisco witnessed a lot of campaigns and attacks worldwide where cyber criminals are targeting users and corporations around the world who are keen to have access or to get access to the latest information related to the pandemic. And due to the increase of events around this pandemic, cyber criminals, they kept targeting those organizations worldwide with phishing campaigns that target customers or users who are looking for information. And those campaigns, sometimes they impersonate the WHO or the CDC or healthcare providers or any government entity around the world to trick the end users to click on a suspicious link or to open an attachment. So those campaigns are everywhere, and they are targeting different users, and they have different, let's say, designs, but they follow the same theme. Next slide, please. So one famous campaign, which is the fake Johns Hopkins COVID-19 infection map, cyber criminals, they created similar fake websites, but whenever you access the websites to get the latest numbers, those websites will exploit a vulnerability and deliver a malware silently to the end user. So those infection maps are being replicated to mimic and to look like the legit one, but actually they are fake and targeting victims. Next slide, please. One of the campaigns, which is the coronavirusmap.com, was discovered by the security intelligence capabilities that we have in Cisco, and it was detected even before the campaign started to become active. So whoever is using these kind of services would be already protected from that. Next slide. Now, phishing attacks, as I said before, can target organizations, and hackers can leverage can leverage those kind of threat vectors to track the users by embedding malicious links in the body and asking the user to click on it in case they are looking for more information, or if they need to have a follow-up, they need to contact us by downloading the document or opening the link. So many organizations, they received similar fake emails, and usually there will be some suspicious signs about those emails. And we usually tell users and customers to always keep an eye on the emails. Look at the from address. Sometimes it's weird. It's not coming from that organization. Sometimes it's coming from a free web-based email like Gmail or Yahoo or Amazon. Look for grammars and language mistakes. Short paragraphs. Sometimes those email templates are short. They don't want to waste your time, and they also have a link or attachment, and you will feel that there is a sense of urgency. So if you find most of those, let's say, signs in the email, give it a second thought before you open the link or the attachment. If there is a contact or if there's an email for your security team, try to forward the email and ask them to check whether this is a fake or a legitimate one, and they will help you with that. Next slide, please. Now, here are some samples of COVID-19 themed phishing emails. So you can see that hackers and threat actors, they try to write a story, to give you something to convince you to open the attachment or to open the link. And in the middle of the pandemic, users are being overloaded by many emails and information coming from every direction. So sometimes while you are browsing the email after working hours from your mobile or from your personal device, you might think that this is a legitimate one, and opening it will increase the risk of getting infected by one of those campaigns. So always look for who is the sender, who is the organization behind this email. If you are looking for COVID-19 related information, always take it from trusted sources. If there is any to wire money or to look for receipts or for sales order, anything in this regard, try to check it with the security team, because it might be a fake one. And opening it could infect your machine with a malware like ransomwares or Trojan horses. Next slide, please. Now, we also found that there is a surge in newly registered domains that have certain keywords related to the pandemic. So having COVID or Wuhan and a similar domain like what we see in the screen here is highly suspicious. And usually hackers, they leverage certain register their domains. So if you find something like test or lab or clinics, etc., think twice before opening those URLs, because they might be malicious. So hackers are registering those domains on daily basis, and they use them in their phishing campaigns. So make sure you think twice, because those domains are let's say interesting when you read them, because for some employees, they think that, oh, this is something that will help us. We are looking to procure certain items or medical equipments or testing equipment. So we need to make sure those domains are legitimate. So always contact the legitimate sources if you are looking for such resources. Next slide, please. And those phishing campaigns and attacks usually target employees either to infect their machines or to steal their credentials. And we have seen a lot of campaigns targeting employees, and the end result was to steal their credentials. And that will help the criminals to come again and access your webmail service or the VPN service or the remote desktop, etc., using your stolen credentials. And according to Verizon data breach investigation reports, around 81% of the investigated incidents incorporated stolen or weak passwords. So this number is alarming, because when you think about why this is happening, basically organizations are still relying on a single factor authenticate the user, which is basically the username and password alone. And this is not effective anymore. That's why we always tell customers and organizations around the world that you need to leverage the multi-factor authentication technique, which is like a second key. So if the hackers stole the username and password, they have to prove their identity using a second key, which they don't own. So and this is something only owned by the employee, and it is highly effective against these kind of attacks. Next slide. So we talked about the threat landscape and what are some of the trending risks on the internet. Now, regardless of the business and the size of the business, the IT and security teams then think about a couple of objectives. How to verify the identity and establish trust. So we allow those trusted employees to connect to our environment. How we enable our employees to work on any connection on any device. So they can work from home using their Wi-Fi, using their 5G or 4G, connect from their personal devices or corporate issued laptops. So we need to give them this flexibility, and we need to maintain secure access to the corporate applications and data. We can't restrict them. They have to continue doing their job. And we need to protect the data from threats. Those cyber criminals, they are always after the data. They might look to steal the data or to encrypt the data and ask for a ransom. So we have to keep in mind that data is always one of the objectives of those breaches. And last but not least, to rely on an integrated security platform to simplify the security operation and policies and configuration, leveraging best of breed silos products that don't integrate and they don't share intelligence or threat information will always increase the IT cost and operation headache. Next slide, please. So what we should do as IT administrators and IT managers, we have to verify the identity of those users. So the minute you decided to send those employees to work from home, then you started to have more risks. And to improve their experience and to make sure everything is secure, we have to start with the identity to make sure those employees are the legitimate ones and they are accessing the resources that they have to access. So by verifying their identity using a multi-factor authentication, that will allow us to make sure if they are being targeted by criminals, those credentials are protected by a second factor. And that will help you to minimize the IT cases and support cases related to stolen passwords or blacklisted email mailboxes, because sometimes hackers, they access your mailbox and start sending spam to the world. And eventually your email will affect the reputation of the company and eventually getting blacklisted. So we have to stop the attackers as early as possible. Don't allow them to get inside. They leverage stolen passwords or weak passwords. So if that's the case, let's protect the credentials by the MFA technology. Next slide, please. So in the industry today, there is a trending concept, which is a zero trust. The zero trust approach when it comes to protecting our employees and credentials is basically the opposite to the previous traditional ones, where it used to trust based on location. So if you are inside the organization, if you are inside the network, you are trusted. And we used to build security policies around this concept. But this concept is not working anymore because hackers, they can find a way to get into the internal network, to be part of the inside. And once they are inside the network, they will have excessive trust and they can access your resources, which doesn't work anymore. The zero trust concept is basically you stop trusting anyone. You can't rely on being inside or outside. So every access to the network has to be validated, has to be authenticated, and having the minimum privileges that it's required. So this is a very important concept to think about zero trust when it comes to designing your security policies and strategies. And this is covering all inside the network or the cloud, bring your own devices, hybrid environment, and etc. So zero trust can be applied everywhere. Next slide. So with zero trust, you will be able to protect your applications, users, and devices in a much better way because you will have continuous trust verification. It's not like you authenticated at 8 a.m., so I will take it for granted that you are trusted all day. Because hackers, they can compromise your machine or your identity at any time. So it has to be a continuous verification process. And to maintain complete visibility, I need to see the devices that you are using to connect to my network. I can't trust your device because your device might be jailbroken. Your device might be missing the face lock, or it might be missing encryption, etc. So we can't protect our employees or our resources if the devices themselves are not trusted. So we have to make sure those devices are well reported, and from an asset management perspective, as an IT administrator, you should know the health and compliance of those devices. So that will allow you to maintain a proper risk management strategy. Also, posturing assessment, you need to check those devices and those endpoints if they are missing a specific critical patch, or if they are not following your strategy of running the approved operating system or the service pack. So you have to always track those devices. And also to inspect whenever those devices are having some sort of a threat or a malware on them. And based on that, you should be having a dynamic and flexible defense strategy, so to minimize or restrict access to those compromised machines from accessing the applications and the resources, because you can't trust them anymore. A machine with a malware running on it could bring a lot of risks to the environment. So having this continuous inspection and integration between the endpoint technology and the multi-factor or the zero trust technology can help you achieve your objectives. Next slide, please. So we talked about trusting the users and applying multi-factor authentication. Now, we want our users to connect to our corporate network from anywhere, at any time, in any location. And this is where the remote access VPN technologies comes to the picture, where it allows you to establish a secure tunnel from your home to the corporate network in order to access your resources over a secure and encrypted tunnel. So that will allow you to access your resources, and all the data are encrypted, and nobody will be able to spy on the data or your connection because it's encrypted. And your network, your access to the network is being monitored and restricted by the IT policy. So that the remote access, the secure remote access can allow the users to maintain their job by accessing their files, their internal portals, databases, and resources. And at the same time, it is secure and highly regulated by the IT policy. Next slide, please. Now, we talked about protecting the user. We talked about the secure access, but we need to make sure when the users are accessing the internet and browsing the public resources, they are also defended and protected from online threats. And that's where the DNS protocol comes to the picture, because the internet is based on the DNS. We can't browse the internet without resolving domain names to IPs. So is treated as the first line of defense, because it happens prior to any other protocol. If I want to go to google.com, I have to resolve the name to the IP. So while the name is being resolved, if you are going to a good domain, this domain name will be resolved to the original IP. But if it's going to a malicious domain.com, then you should block it, so you restrict access to threats and detect if you have a compromised machine inside your organization or part of your remote workforce, so that compromised machine will be protected from accessing the malicious websites or malicious infrastructure on the internet. So that will help you to protect users from accessing those malicious websites. And at the same time, if you happen to have a compromised or infected one, it will be isolated and stop any further communication with the remote threat actors. So this is a very easy way to protect the remote users while they are browsing the internet directly, or if they are disconnected from the VPN session. Next slide, please. So users today, no, the previous slide, please. You skipped one. Yes. So when our users are using their corporate issued laptops or personal laptops, they are also prone to receive malwares and threats. So the endpoint has to be protected by some sort of an endpoint security technology to scan the files and prevent malware infection by relying on reputation data or signatures or sandboxing or dynamic analysis, etc., and other layers of controls in order to protect this endpoint from malware infections, from attempts to exploit a vulnerability on those machines, or in case there is a website that is delivering a malware, so the machine has to be protected. And the endpoint security is an essential component in the security policy. So you have to also think about how we can protect those users from viruses and malwares when they are browsing the internet or using personal storage devices or connecting those laptops to their personal home network. So those laptops has to be protected as well using technology like the endpoint detection and response. This is a new technology in the market where it protects the systems way much better than the traditional antivirus softwares. Next slide, please. So if you ask me how Cisco can help organizations to have a secure remote access from home, Cisco today is helping existing customers to extend their capacity to add more users to the VPN, or to allow them to connect to their remote network. So if you are an existing customer and you need our help to increase the capacity of your devices, the network, the security, to handle the additional users who have to connect remotely, that's one thing we can help. Also, we are helping non-Cisco customers if they have received instructions to allow users to work from home and they need our expertise and technology to design the secure remote access experience for their users. That's something also we can help today. And we have helped many organizations around the world where they had a very short time period to allow thousands of customers, of users, to connect remotely within a couple of days. And we managed to help them, and they are happy, and their operation was not disrupted. Next slide, please. So what is the current secure remote work solution that we are offering today? So we have four main pillars. So starting with from the bottom, that's the VPN infrastructure. So if today you want to allow your users to connect remotely, you need to have the Cisco firewall technology, which will be the main VPN concentrator layer that will receive the VPN requests, together with the VPN agent that will be installed on the laptop, which will allow the user to establish the secure connection to the firewall. The second one is the endpoint security, which is AMP for endpoint, to protect the endpoint from malware infections, and that will cover multiple operating systems. The third one is the multi-factor authentication to protect the users' credentials from being stolen, and verify the identity of the user, and also to check the compliancy and health of their devices. And the last one is the DNS security to protect the users whenever they are browsing the internet from malicious websites and from accessing phishing URLs, command and control servers, whether they are connected to the VPN or they are disconnected. So these four layers, they are part of our comprehensive solution to protect any user anytime and anywhere to connect remotely to their environment. Next slide, please. So basically, the solution is allowing connectivity to allow our users to connect to the network, and also adding the security aspect as well. Next, please. And as you saw in the previous slide, the solution is comprehensive, where it's covering both the connectivity and security. We have witnessed some organizations where they care more about the connectivity and do it to the urgency. They need to establish the connectivity without thinking about securing those users. And we always suggest to think about security and connectivity at the same time, because the minute you allow those users to connect to your environment, you will introduce more risks and threats to your internal corporate network. And due to the lockdown and to the travel and commute restrictions, you don't want to have any incident inside the corporate network or the data center, and you don't have the flexibility to drive to your physical locations, or to a branch, or to a head office. Why? Because someone is connected remotely and they introduce some sort of a malware, or a hacker managed to pivot from one infected laptop into the corporate network, and that allowed them to move laterally and steal data or disrupt your business. So always think about securing the remote access before the connectivity, since many organizations are facing incidents on daily basis due to some user connecting remotely, and his machine was infected and introducing a malware to the network. Next slide, please. So as you can see, here's an example of how the solution works on a laptop. This interface represents the AnyConnect agent, which is installed and having all the required modules for the endpoint security and umbrella, which is the DNS security. And the multi-factor authentication is just on a mobile app that you install on your mobile. And whenever you want to connect to the remote VPN session, after you provide your username and password, we will send you an auto push message to your mobile to validate your identity. So if you are the user who made this request, you just basically approve it. Otherwise, you will deny it and you will stop the session. So it's very user friendly, and our customers are very happy with the experience of having the VPN agent installed together with the multi-factor authentication and the DNS security all together working natively and allowing easier experience and better IT operation and deployment and support as well. Next slide, please. So Cisco has been recognized by the industry for our security leadership in the market. We have collected multiple awards and we are being recognized in multiple categories from endpoint security to firewall to the next generation firewall, advanced persistent threats, zero trust, and email security. So we are very serious and committed to our customers to provide the best security products and portfolio to the market. And the industry recognition is showing our commitment and seriousness. Next slide. So I left a couple of tips for our audience here to secure their employees. The first one is to raise the security awareness. Awareness is a continuous process. So always send emails or leverage phishing simulation and education tools to help your employees to recognize suspicious emails or suspicious attachments and links. So this can be a continuous process. We ourselves in Cisco, we receive those emails every once in a while from the IT team to test our skills and capability to spot the phishing and malicious emails. And it's really getting us better more and more when we being receiving those awareness tests. I also for employees to think twice before they click on suspicious links, avoid fake news and and suspicious resources being shared by criminals on the internet, implement security controls beyond the traditional VPN and antivirus, as we mentioned before, leverage the NIST standard and specifically the 800-46, which is a nice framework to guide you for designing teleworking and remote access for enterprise organizations. This is a very nice standard that it's comprehensive and provide a lot of practical tips. Build and test a cybersecurity incident response plan. Many organizations that I dealt with, they had no IR plan altogether, and they had to deal with some breach, and they could not handle it the right way because there was no plan at all. So we always recommend, if you don't have a plan, start today. There are a lot of resources on the internet. There are a lot of advisory services and consulting services in the market which can help you to establish and implement a cyber incident response plan to help you be more ready to respond to cyber threats. And last but not least, inform your employees and users and family members to avoid the information overload, the misinformation being shared on social media and the internet when it comes to COVID-19, because the truth is always there, but you have to access it through the right resources. And with that, I'm done with my part. And if there are any questions, Paula, please go ahead.
So now we would like to ask anybody has questions. Okay, I do have one question. Not yet, but I do have one question. Do you find that companies in Kuwait prioritize cybersecurity? And is this something that they should prioritize as a small organization?
That's a good question. Now, cybersecurity is a very important subject when it comes to the IT managers' priorities, and we tend to see medium-sized to large-sized organizations focus more on cyber, and they have budgets for cybersecurity investments. Small-sized companies, they tend to rely on traditional layers, and they have to think again and to consider the industry best practices when it comes to securing their employees and corporate resources. The traditional controls are good to a certain level, but they have to think about, okay, how about the other attack vectors? How to protect the credentials? How to protect our employees from advanced phishing campaigns? How to protect our users when they are working from home? The internet service providers, they will provide you with the internet, and that's it. So who's going to protect the users? So we have to also extend the protection to those remote users, and to think about looking at the best practices and the recommendations from the industry when it comes to protect their environment. So even if they are small organizations, they can follow the same best practices.
Thank you. And what do you...
Can you hear me?
Sorry. Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
You can hear me, because I thought my audio is not working. Okay. This mic with you.
Yes, please go ahead and ask your question. Thank you.
It's okay. I don't have a question right now. I'll come back to you later on, but just I'm listening to your.
Okay. So another question that we have is, companies usually have this policy of, larger companies have this policy of, changing your password every 3 months. Is this something that you advocate for? Do you find it to be useful, or do you find this to be an old practice that could be replaced with something that's more efficient rather than changing your password for everything every 3 months?
All right. So we can't live without passwords. Passwords are everywhere, and they are there whenever we use our internal applications or cloud applications, etc. So we have to change the passwords. We have to follow the IT security standard, which sometimes differs from one organization to another, but most of the time they should follow the best practices of using a long, complex passwords, at least 8 characters, and have some symbols and numbers, capitals or small letters. So make sure the password is complex. Changing the password is a good practice, because as you see in one of the slides, I mentioned that 81% of the breaches, they leveraged a weak or stolen password. So the password is one of the targets of hackers. They always start with stealing the password. So in many organizations, we tend to see, based on the security posture, if it's a banking environment, they tend to have a shorter period, like maybe every 1 month or 2 months. So for other organizations, it could be for every 90 days. So changing the password is a good practice. Creating a complex password and adding a second factor to protect the password in case it's stolen or it's weak. And there is also another recommendation, is to use password generators to create those complex passwords. So that is a good practice. So instead of using the same password for different corporate applications or personal applications, this is not a good practice, because imagine hackers, they manage to breach the database of some social media website or some third-party company, and they manage to find your password. Guess what's next going to happen? They're going to try the same password against all your internal resources or corporate resources until they find the right one. Then they will access your organization. So that's why having different passwords for personal and corporate applications is a good practice. Second, use password generators. Third, use multi-factor authentication, which can protect your corporate passwords and personal passwords at the same time. Many of the MFA vendors, they allow their customers to leverage the MFA technology to protect their personal accounts, and most of the time for free. I use my corporate MFA app to protect my Gmail and my Amazon account for free, and this gives me the comfort that in case someone managed to steal my personal password, at least I have an MFA, which is something I own to protect my password.
Thank you so much. And are there any other questions?
Hand is up.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
This is Sajid here from Bulgan Bank. It's a very well done presentation. I really enjoyed it. I've got one question. Now we're talking about Cisco recommending the NIST 846 recommendations and guidelines. But in a world of BYOD and CYOD and COPE, we have a lot of people bringing in their own devices, and a lot of these devices use their own personal antivirus software. There are some devices like you have the iPads which don't really have an antivirus software. So how does Cisco address all these issues, and how does it bundle it into its remote tunneling?
All right, this is a great question. So the question was about how to protect the bring your own device when you bring them to the corporate environment, or if you use them to connect to remote resources. Now, there are multiple things that we should consider when it comes to BYOD. First thing is those devices are not managed by the corporate policy. So we don't know which one is jailbroken, which one is running out of date OS, which one of them is missing the face lock or encryption. So based on the type of users who are going to use those tablets or personal devices, you will be having a different policy. So if I'm looking at a bank environment and I want to allow my employees to leverage their personal tablets, which I don't manage, and I don't know what type of tools or security that they have, then we have to make sure that with having the, let's say, the multi-factor and the device trust and posturing, you will be able to have a set of policies that will allow you to say, okay, if this tablet is trying to access the email, then it's okay to be connected from a personal device. But if the same tablet is trying to access an internal sensitive portal and the tablet is missing the enterprise security certificate, or it's jailbroken, or it's missing the minimum the minimum recommended iOS version, then the user will be denied. So you can create flexible risk-based policies and allow the same users to use those devices. But if they are accessing sensitive corporate resources, then they have to be forced to use the corporate issued laptop or tablet because they are managed by your IT team. But if they are accessing some resources and you are tolerant toward using your personal devices, then that's something that you have to decide as a risk manager or cybersecurity information security manager. So there are ways to leverage those personal devices, but definitely based on our experience working with banks and sensitive organizations, they tend to ask the user, if you want to use your tablet, we have to deploy such and such agent to make sure that this is secure and monitored. But we will not access your data. It's going to be only for our security policy and auditing. But if you want to have full access, you have to leverage our issued laptop or tablet, because you're going to download sensitive data. We don't know what happens after you disconnect the VPN. If this tablet is stolen, who's responsible for that? So there are many questions that has to be answered before we say, yes, go ahead, go with the personal tablet versus using a corporate issued laptop.
Thank you.
And as a follow-up to this, if there are additional, let's say, inquiries regarding this, we can talk after the call and help you more with the best practices and the expertise.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you.
And I believe Dana has a question as well.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, Ayad, this is Dana Winner.
Hi, Dana. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, always there to support you as you are with us. I'd just like to remind people that we have a nonprofit professional certification organization in Kuwait called ISC Squared. And maybe you could say something, Ayad, about the planned upcoming meeting with Cisco.
Sure. So there is a plan to schedule a session soon. We still have not yet committed the date, where we are going to invite a CISO advisor to address the cybersecurity community in Kuwait and to share the best practices from his experience, to share the CISO's priorities in 2020 and what's the day of a CISO looks like. So it's going to be an interesting session. We are still in the planning phase, and we will share more information once we have concrete details.
Thank you, Ayad.
Sure.
Thank you so much. And I think that's all the time we have for questions. So again, thank you so much, Mr. Ayad and Cisco, for taking the time to provide us with such valuable information. And all of you who attended the webinar, we thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and we look forward to seeing you in our upcoming events. Please don't forget to follow us on social media for more upcoming events and initiatives. And I hope you'll have a great afternoon.
Thank you.